Hello, welcome to a Soulprint Mini. Thank you very, very much for being here. Okay, so I am recording this on Tuesday mid-morning, Mountain Time. You're going to be seeing it Wednesday. So as I'm recording this, the prosecution has not finished questioning Michael Cohen, and I suppose at some point today on Tuesday, the cross-examination will start, or it will start, on Thursday morning. So I thought this would be the perfect time to take a quick peek and look at the energy, not necessarily between Cohen and Trump, but just independently and see how they're sort of responding to the fact that the other person is in their vicinity. So let's get started, shall we? Let's zero in first on, and this is channeled, let's zero in first on Donald Trump. All right, so this is interesting. Very often, particularly lately, when I step into Trump's energy, there's rage and he's angry and he's just like volatile feeling. That energy seems to have become slightly subdued. And the energy around him now really feels like exhausted. Just like this is going on and none of it is good. And he doesn't know what to do with himself. And, it's a witch hunt. And Marshawn is a great big old meanie. And his defense lawyers, they're not being aggressive enough. And then that the female lawyer was really aggressive with Stormy Daniels, and then that didn't play well. And it's sort of like a jumble of grievances. But what's so interesting is there really is sort of a feeling of just weariness. Now, as of right now, Trump is spending a great deal of his time with his eyes closed. And for those of you who particularly own a cat, but dogs do it too, is if they don't like what's going on, they'll bury their head, in your arm or like this. They don't want to see it. And they're of the opinion that if they can't see it, it doesn't exist. It's that same sort of energy, right? It's like he can't seem to absorb or process what's coming at him. It overwhelms him a little bit. It confuses him. And so part of how he has decided to process this, subconsciously or unconsciously, is to just keep his eyes closed so that he's not also receiving visual stimuli. I'm not convinced that he's awake through all of it, but people who are in the courtroom and are able to see him are saying, like, there are times where his eyes are closed like 50% of the time. Now, he can't be sleeping all that much because at some point, you'd think he'd start snoring and the lawyer would elbow him. But for right now, it feels like a lot of it is just like, I don't like what I see in front of me. I don't like what's going on. And so I'm going to close my eyes and block it. The thing with Cohen is that, as he's reacting or to Cohen is interesting because on the one hand, you have to sort of feel like if he was going to become really volatile, it would be during this witness testimony. But energetically, I got to say, I'm not seeing that. What I'm seeing is a sense of weariness, perhaps recognition. There are things that are coming out. For example, the comment that was made about Melania, and was he not concerned that she was going to be upset about the Access Hollywood tape? And his response was something along the lines of, well, how long do you think I would be single? Now, make no mistake. It's not that Trump actually regrets saying that. It's not that Trump actually didn't think it was accurate when he said it. And at no point did he actually give two hoots about Melania. But at this point, removed, as he's listening to it, what he is recognizing is that that's really not good for his brand. Okay. And that's what you got to remember about Trump, right? It's all about messaging. It's all about ego. It's all about his brand. So he's starting to hear things that just, it's going to make it really hard for him to, um, repair the brand. Okay. So he started that kind of saying that he's not angry. I'm not saying that he's not frustrated and there's this sort of volatility going on in him. But it's very interesting that there just seems to be this sort of resignation, weariness. That's how he's doing. In some ways, he viewed Michael Cohen. Um, I don't want to say like a son, because honestly, it feels by and large that he has a great deal of contempt for his sons. Speaking of which, let me just jump right over on this. Apparently, Melania has sent a letter or a notification to the Florida Delegate Committee and said, thanks, but no thanks. Barron will not be a delegate in Florida. So Mama Bear stepped in and said, nah, you're not going to do that. So that's really interesting, because one has to get that Trump said, let's get Barron on the deal. And Melania said, oh, no, you don't. So just putting that out there for those of you who may not have heard about that. So, but Trump viewed Cohen as somebody that he could rely on. And there is a very deep sense of betrayal. And from Trump's perspective, right? This is, how could he do this? I treated him so well. He never had a better boss in his whole life. And look at what he does. So there's some of that that's going on. Now, let's hop over and take a look at Cohen. He he's sort of mentally gearing up for what he knows or expects to be a very, very difficult cross-examination. Now, I have to tell you, I'm being told energetically that that cross is not going to be as terrible and as effective. Um, not as terrible as people think, and not as effective as the defense hopes, okay? It's not going to be a replay of the Stormy Daniels situation, but it's also not going to score the kind of points that they think they're going to score. Part of the reason is that what I'm seeing as I look at this is that Michael Cohen is going to be very, very without expression. Sorry, the word escaped me. He's not going to react, and they're going to goad him and they're going to poke at him, and he's like statue like almost, and he's going to give a lot of yes no kind of answers, and they're not going to be able to get that rise out of him, which is what they're looking for, right? They want to get him flustered and riled up, so he starts saying things that maybe don't necessarily help the defense, but definitely hurt the prosecution. I'm not getting that energy around him at all. I'm getting stoic, very stoic, and he's not really going to respond to a lot. So, um, so he's concerned, but as I look forward, it doesn't feel like there's all that much to be sort of concerned about. Now, how he's feeling is interesting, because part of it is just like relieved, right? That feeling that you get when, a weight is being lifted off your shoulders or starts to be lifted off of your shoulders. So that's part of it. Part of it is it's sort of a sense of satisfaction, right? He waited a long time to be able to get his side of the story out. And yeah, he did it on his podcasts and other media performances or appearances. But he's able to sort of put it out in a very kind of methodical and concise manner, which is not something that he's been able to do sort of in its entirety before. I have not read his books yet. It's on my pile. And yeah, he got that story out then. But where he's at now is some of the anger has receded a little bit, and he's looking at it a little bit more objectively. And he really does see this as this opportunity to set the record straight, get his version of things, events out there. Now, the other thing that he is experiencing. So he has already testified against Trump in the bad business practices case before Edgar. Okay, so they've already had this sort of initial confrontation. As Cohen looks at Trump, there's sort of two things that are rolling around in his head. One is he's so small. He's not this big, powerful boss who, I worked myself into a frenzy trying to please and not make angry and. So part of it, he's actually finally looking at him like the guy's human as opposed to some illusion or some bigger than life being. And part of it is it's almost like a sense of confusion on his own part about how he was so taken in by it. How that magnetism that Trump had was able to pull him in until he really did lose kind of all objectivity, right? I mean, he did say at one point that, it was his family and their profound disappointment in him and the fact that he could not see the way Trump was actually treating him. That was one of the things that really prompted him to sort of snap back and step back and take a more objective look at things. That seems to be where he's at. There really is a feeling that it's like, let this be over. Let me close this chapter. I need a vacation. There's just a sense of enough, like really enough. Like this has to end now. It's just been going on in my life for too many years. I paid too high a price and I want to close this chapter. So he is actually finally seeing Trump with clarity, I guess. And in some ways, he is also confirming to himself that it's a good thing that he has stepped back when he did. Right. I mean, Emperor has no clothes, Oz behind the curtain. He's finally seeing Trump for what Trump is. And there is a great deal of regret about some of his previous behavior. He relished being known as, the fixer, right? But in hindsight, he's looking at it with some degree of sort of, I almost want to say embarrassment. Energetically, that's where we're at. I have to say, I'm a little surprised because I really did expect a little bit more volatility on both sides of the equation. But there's just a sense of exhaustion, I have to say. I've stepped into this energy and I'm tired, right? I just want this to stop. And so that's where we're at. Now, I'm not saying that there may not be a few, outbursts, but by and large, it feels very much like a lot of that sort of really angry energy. Trump is able to vent it when he comes out of court and he holds his stupid little press conferences. And by the way, are we noticing all of the sycophants who are now lining up behind him? Um, and complain about a lot of things, but at no point ever say, well, no, Trump is innocent. He didn't do this. Um, they don't say that. They just rail against justice and the judge and Biden and the courts. And they got nothing to say that actually defends Trump because it's indefensible. Alrighty, that's what I know. Thank you very, very much for being here. Don't forget your questions in the comment section for Pendulum Friday. Take good care of yourselves. And until I see you next time, be well. Bye-bye.